So I thought we'd talk about co-counseling today. I don't know if anyone, I know a few people have heard of it, and I know Linda knows about it, and Edith knows about it because they've taken this class that I teach um, called Cocoa Nuts, which was talking about being nuts for co-counseling. So let me just begin. I want to begin with James 1:19. Know this, my beloved brethren, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. I was also thinking, I really appreciate what Carol had to say today about our president being a human being underneath, because I think it's very easy to forget that. And that will become kind of in the context of what I'm talking about. So that was really special. Thank you, Carol. So I was thinking about, how in our age of social media, we are encouraged to post our thoughts online so everyone knows what we think. And there are all these ways to connect, texting, emailing, Zooming. Yet, all this evidence shows that all these technological advancements and easy to connect, we actually feel more isolated and disconnected than ever. And these technologies have definitely facilitated our narcissistic age. I think we were headed toward narcissism anyway, but the technologies have really made it easier and harder to be connected to each other. And of course, attention is in the shortest supply ever, right? So these modes are no substitute for actual connection, for the actual quality of attention that deep listening brings. So as Carol, and we all know, our country's in turmoil. Our current president has exhibited toxic narcissism, yet 70 million Americans voted for him. He's manipulated the truth to suit himself with the notion of alternative facts. And so, as we say, it's a house of mirrors, and there are no ears in the house of mirrors. So the hope is that we will turn on the ears. We will listen to each other and discover our own humanity. So something that's been really important to me is co-counseling. And I can tell you, I came out of a family with an overbearing father of 3 daughters, and he taught us by example that when you go into a room, you need to go in with guns blazing and turn your mouth into a gun and just talking over people, dominating a room. I think it was called leadership then, and now it's called bullying. But and it worked pretty well, in high school. But when I graduated, I landed into the so-called real world. I realized how few deep connections I had actually made. So began to explore that. And I was teaching at LSU in Baton Rouge, and there were these 2 wonderful, very caring education professors. And they taught us in their home, just a few of us. And academic communities are pretty transient. Kids certainly come and go, faculty come and go, but it was a real powerful modality I learned, and all the people that I co-counseled with, I remain friends with. So that was really important to me. So just to talk a little bit about it, co-counseling is a subset of what's known as reevaluation counseling, started by Harvey Jaggins in 1950. And there's a website called rc.org if you want to know more about it. And it's a form of radical deep listening, okay, combined with unwavering attention, that quality that's in such short supply. Co-counseling reveals our vast, flexible intelligence to ourselves, unearths a love of life, great relationships, caring and communication, and inherent power. The nice thing about it, one of many nice things, it gives us the ability to handle each situation in a unique and flexible way. Okay, so most of us at some point have just, you get information, you get a lot of information and just react instantly rather than thinking, stopping and thinking about it. And it's kind of funny because that was one of the things I loved about Church of the Brethren is that people didn't communicate here the way I had always learned to. People actually did stop and listen and hear. And I was very attracted to that. So it's kind of ironic that I'm talking about it. You probably already know about it. Okay. So the way it works is two people get together and they designate a certain amount of time and they decide who's going to go first um, and then they set the timer. And so what happens is two people, one is a client, one's a counselor for the moment, and the counselor takes the client's hand, and if you can, in the Zoom, in the COVID time, and they beam love at them. They beam love at them. Just giving lots of undivided attention, lots of eye contact, and that in itself can cause the counselor to what's known as discharge. And discharge takes the form of shaking, crying, sweating, yawning. So the underlying premise is that when we're growing up, we get hurt. That's just a fact of life. We get emotionally hurt and we don't get the unconditional love that we always wanted and needed, or the mirroring, by a parent. So we get hurt. That emotion, that hurt lodges in the body somehow. It has the effect of a thing. It leaves a residue in the body and it gets stored there. So when it feels like, it's like Edna St. Vincent Millay said, life isn't one damn thing after another. It's the same damn thing over and over and over. And Jackins would say that's the result of your emotional wounding sticking in there, not getting out, not getting expressed, and just developing this pattern. And so you have a pattern of behavior, constantly seeking mirroring. And, narcissists, as we have ample evidence in our society, they actually hate themselves. And I found that very shocking because the narcissists I know seem to really love themselves, but true love does not need to assert itself over and over and over with everybody and constantly get mirrored back, right? So that person who's in charge of our country is doing that same thing over and over. In my experience, when I'm being given undivided attention, that's enough to cause me to discharge. I mean, I start shaking, sweating, crying, depending on the quality of attention and how long it goes on. Because that is actually something that we're seeking and something beautifully that we can actually give each other. We can actually give attention to each other. So, this obviously isn't a substitute for psychotherapy or deep psychotherapy. People have deep, psychological issues. But for those of us who are just your garden variety neurotic or, perfectionistic or, just our typical way we go through the world, given our crazy circumstances, it is extremely helpful. And I've had this experience where I've known someone for a long time, but until I co-counseled with them, I actually had no idea how beautiful they were. I mean, I just happened last week. Like this person I've known a long time, she's taken my class twice. And, just the fact of looking at her face, I was like, wow, I think we see a tiny portion of what is there. And it takes attention and focusing to realize it, to get to it. So lots of eye contact. If you can feel comfortable in a gloved hand, touching, holding hands, that's a really sweet thing to do. If it's someone who's in your pod, that's great. Then you already don't have to worry about the plague. And you ask a few questions. You start with what's new and good, because this is a very positive, very enlightenment modality, assuming that life is great, but there's all this discharge on top of it and we just can't see it. So something that was brand new for me to learn is that when somebody tells their story, you don't necessarily say, oh, you don't say at all, oh, that reminds me of my story, right? Which is very common in how we communicate, not in the brethren, I have to say, not in the brethren, but everywhere else. Like, um, that's not what it's doing. You are actually listening. And the another underlying premise is the counselor already knows. They already know what, if they're presenting with a problem or a solution, they know the answer. They know what to do. And you certainly should not try to fix or solve, even if you're pretty sure you know the answer. Okay. So it's a different quality of listening. It's not a cocktail party. If someone is crying, we're like, change the subject, think of something good, good to say, cheer up. The counselor would actually, if someone cries or, shows discharge, that counselor could say the same thing again that they just said to cause the discharge, because that's where the healing occurs, is when the discharge releases. Because Harvey's idea is that we have a natural innate human intelligence, and when we get hurt, we temporarily lose it. We don't have that intelligence. We don't have access to it. We just start reacting and protecting and covering, putting on the armor, right? Okay. So it's been really a nice, not just nice, really revolutionary thing in my life. And I thought it would be a good time to share it. Let's see, I don't want to talk too much about theory. So what there is eye contact, unwavering attention for the counselor, and for the client, discharge. And then the client begins to understand and hear their own voice and take their own counsel. What there is not is interrupting, commenting on the client's experience. Okay. So even if you're not one-upping with your stories, you don't even comment on it. You don't suggest. Really, the counselor does very little talking, but lots and lots of giving attention. Okay. So we'd say, obviously before you co-counsel, you don't want to do caffeine or a lot of caffeine or drugs or alcohol, certainly. And that can interfere with discharge. And of course, another policy is confidentiality. Absolutely will not share or pass along anything said in a co-counseling session. And no crosstalk, which is that commenting or suggesting. Okay. So it's a little bit late. I thought that we might try to actually do this, but I don't think we have time. So what I did was I sent you the short sheet. If you want to try it, I highly recommend it. I'll just quote Harvey. RC has one goal. I help you, you help me to heal from distress. And sorry, I might not have said this. The other thing is that, once the client and counselor are established and they have their session, you literally set a timer and, and then you switch it up, because that's the idea. Is like, often when I've been distressed, I'll call my friends and say, I hate to lay this on you, and have you got time, and blah, blah, blah. And when you switch it up like that, you really do, you lose that guilt of having to, unburden yourself, and that you're a burden, and, it's reciprocal. So that's a very important aspect. Now, obviously, there'll be times when people are very, very upset and say, okay, today we'll just go one way, and you'll just do the whole hour, exceptions to the rule. And the last thing I'll say about it, in doing this, we'll be assisting ourselves and others to recover certain abilities which we inherently possess, but which we may not have had a chance to develop. Among these is the ability to deeply enjoy life, which seems to be the natural birthright of every human being. We learn certain tools for achieving and enjoying excellent relationships with other people, but the kicker is that the ability to deeply enjoy life and to have deeper conversations, more meaningful and deeper relationships. And I think this is just, a time to mind this, when we're separated from each other, from our natural interactions. Co-counseling can also be your magical accessory that you can put on at Rachel this week if you want to. So thank you for letting me talk about it, and I hope you will try it.